The glow of chandeliers danced off champagne glasses in the center of the exclusive Belle Époque restaurant, where the elite gathered for caviar, business talk, and indulgent gossip. Waiters in white gloves glided between tables, delivering gold-rimmed plates as soft jazz music murmured through the room. At a corner table near the window, Lucas Blackwood, clad in a tailored charcoal suit, laughed quietly at something whispered by the woman across from him. She was young, breathtaking, and wore a crimson silk dress that clung to her like a second skin. Harper Langdon, the latest face in his string of secrets. Her fingers flirted with the edge of her wine glass, her eyes fixed on Lucas as though nothing else existed. But something did exist, just outside the restaurant's grand doors. The doors burst open with a sharp crash. Gasps scattered through the room like a broken string of pearls. There she stood, Victoria Blackwood. 6 months pregnant, hair windblown, cheeks flushed, eyes wide and desperate. Her coat hung open, revealing her maternity dress clinging to her body, her swollen belly rising and falling with every panicked breath. For a split second, she scanned the room, and then her eyes locked on her husband. Her face crumpled. "Lucas," she said, barely above a whisper, but it echoed like a gunshot. I turned to him. Lucas stood abruptly. His jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with a fury that chilled the room. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed, voice sharp and biting. Chairs scraped against the marble as guests leaned closer, caught between discomfort and curiosity. "I followed your driver," Victoria stammered, her voice trembling. "You weren't answering." I was worried." Harper leaned back in her chair with the poise of someone who knew she had already won. She didn't speak, just smiled. A cold, twisted smile. "I told you," Lucas growled, stepping forward, "not to show up unannounced. You just can't help ruining everything, can you?" "She's pregnant," someone whispered from a nearby table. "I didn't mean to cause a scene," Victoria pleaded, placing a hand protectively over her stomach. "I just needed." Before she could finish, Lucas's hand cracked across her cheek with a force that sent her stumbling sideways. The restaurant fell into stunned silence. Gasps rang out. A glass shattered somewhere. A man dropped his fork. Victoria steadied herself, blinking through tears, one hand on the table to keep from falling. The red mark across her cheek was already blooming. She looked up at him, eyes wide with shock and betrayal. Cameras clicked. Phones had already been raised. "You're pathetic," Lucas spat. "Ruining my night because you can't control your emotions. You always do this." "Lucas!" Someone barked in protest, but he ignored it. Victoria didn't respond. She turned, slowly, her hands trembling as she cradled her belly and made her way toward the door. No one stopped her. No one helped. Her heels clicked unevenly against the marble as she disappeared into the night. Behind her, chaos erupted. People whispered. Waiters exchanged looks. Harper stood, brushing down her dress as if nothing had happened, her smirk deepening. But the damage had been done, and the world was watching. In the beginning, their love story had the glimmer of something timeless, something the world admired. Victoria James had been a rising star in corporate law, known for her eloquence and courtroom fire. Lucas Blackwood was the ambitious tech entrepreneur who had turned a small AI startup into a multimillion-dollar empire. When they met at a charity gala, sparks flew so quickly it felt inevitable. Within a year, they were married. The media dubbed them the golden couple, brains, beauty, and billions. She was the poised attorney who grounded him. He was the visionary who gave her the world. But no one saw what happened behind closed doors. At first, it was subtle. Lucas suggested she take a break from her career to travel with him, to enjoy their success, to prepare for starting a family. "You've worked so hard," he'd said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Let me take care of us now." Victoria hesitated. She loved her job. But the idea of building a home, a future with him, was compelling. So she walked away from the courtroom, telling herself it was temporary. That temporary pause became permanent. Each time she hinted at returning to law, Lucas redirected her. "You don't need that stress," he'd say. "You're too brilliant to be arguing over contracts." He began handling her schedule, insisting on a shared calendar, vetting her calls, controlling her access to friends. At first, it felt like love. Attention. Care. It took months before she realized it was a gilded cage. Her independence shrank. Friends grew distant. Invitations were turned down before she saw them. He'd remind her how lucky she was, how millions of women would kill to have her life. "All you have to do is trust me," he'd repeat. And she did. For a while. When she became pregnant, it felt like hope. They had tried for months. The day the test showed 2 pink lines, Victoria cried with joy. She imagined it would change things, soften him, warm him, bring back the man she married. Lucas had seemed excited at first. He bought expensive nursery furniture and hosted a press announcement about their next chapter. But privately, he grew more distant. He worked late. He traveled more. He snapped easily. Then came Harper. Victoria first saw her name in a hotel reservation Lucas had accidentally left open on his laptop. Harper Langdon. She Googled her. Model. Influencer. 24. The kind of woman who smiled like she knew all your secrets. Victoria confronted him, trembling, holding the printout in her hand. Lucas didn't deny it. He just scoffed. "What did you expect? You've changed," he said coldly. "You're no fun anymore." The words struck deeper than any slap ever could. Victoria tried to pretend it wasn't happening. For the baby, for herself. But the illusion was crumbling. And now, standing alone in her sister's guest room days after the restaurant incident, her cheeks still sore, her belly rising with life, she realized the truth. Her marriage had been a beautiful lie from the beginning. Harper Langdon wasn't naive, not in the way her flawless skin and wide-eyed Instagram selfies might suggest. Beneath the soft pink filters and curated captions was a woman who knew exactly what she wanted. Influence, money, and the kind of man who could give her both without asking too many questions. Lucas Blackwood had been on her radar for months. She'd seen him at tech summits and fashion fundraisers, always trailed by cameras, always standing beside his poised, beautiful wife. But Harper wasn't intimidated. She saw something Victoria didn't, a chink in the armor. And she aimed straight for it. Their first meeting wasn't an accident. She made sure to be seated at the same table at a fashion tech event in Monaco, wearing a low-cut black dress and a smile that suggested familiarity. Lucas noticed her instantly, and Harper made sure he remembered her. She laughed at his jokes, leaned in when he spoke, and touched his wrist lightly when she excused herself. By the end of the night, she'd given him just enough of a spark to make him wonder. The next day, he followed her on Instagram. From there, Harper played the long game. She didn't flirt openly. Not at first. Instead, she played into his ego. She left comments about his brilliant business mind, tagged him in articles about power couples breaking up, and sent him links to private events. She crafted herself as the woman who saw him for who he truly was, unbound by expectations, misunderstood, underappreciated. It didn't take long for Lucas to respond. First with likes. Then messages. Then private meetings. She knew he was married. She didn't care. In fact, it was part of the appeal. Harper had no desire to play house. She wanted to dethrone a queen and become one in her own right. It worked. Lucas, already drifting from Victoria emotionally, began to vent to Harper in their secret conversations. Harper was careful not to criticize Victoria directly. Instead, she asked loaded questions. "Do you ever feel like she doesn't understand your vision anymore? Or maybe she's just scared you'll outgrow her?" Each seed was planted carefully. She never needed to say Victoria was weak. Lucas arrived at that conclusion himself. Meanwhile, Victoria began noticing things. Charges from designer boutiques she didn't shop at. Restaurant bills from cities Lucas hadn't told her he was traveling to. Jewelry she never received. He started coming home late, sometimes not at all. When she asked, He dismissed her as hormonal. "You're overthinking again," he'd mutter, annoyed. She knew something was wrong. She could feel it. The night she followed him to the Belle Époque, she wasn't thinking clearly. Her heart was racing, her mind frayed from sleepless nights and silence. She needed to see for herself. She needed confirmation, even if it hurt. What she didn't expect was the slap, the cameras, the humiliation. But as the door had swung open and she saw Harper's hand wrapped around her husband's, something inside her broke. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was war. The video hit the internet like wildfire. Just hours after the incident at Belle Époque, a grainy cell phone recording of the slap surfaced on social media, uploaded by a bystander who had captured the entire humiliating moment. Within minutes, it was reposted by influencers, picked up by news outlets, and dissected by millions of angry viewers. The footage was short, less than a minute, but it didn't need to be long. It showed everything: Victoria's stunned expression, her hand instinctively shielding her stomach, Lucas's furious snarl as his hand struck her face, and Harper's silent smirk in the background. By morning, every major news station had picked it up. The headline blared across TV screens and smartphone notifications: "Millionaire Lucas Blackwood caught on camera slapping pregnant wife in public." Online forums lit up. Hashtags like #JusticeForVictoria and #BlackwoodAbuser trended globally. Talk show hosts condemned him. Feminist organizations mobilized. Within 24 hours, protesters gathered outside the Blackwood Technologies headquarters, waving signs that read, "Protect women, not abusers," and "Pregnancy is not a weakness." Victoria, meanwhile, was curled up on a couch in her sister's apartment, wrapped in a blanket, face swollen, eyes hollow. Her phone buzzed non-stop, but she couldn't bring herself to look at it. She hadn't left the apartment. She barely ate. She barely spoke. The betrayal still echoed in her chest like a second heartbeat. It was during one of those silent afternoons, with the blinds drawn and a mug of untouched tea going cold beside her, that an unexpected knock came at the door. Her sister opened it, then turned to her with wide eyes. "Victoria! It's Daniel Monroe." She hadn't heard that name in years. Daniel had been her law school colleague, brilliant, fiery, and now, she remembered, a well-known civil rights attorney. He stepped inside in a sharp gray suit, his expression softened with concern, not pity. "I saw the video," he said gently, sitting beside her. "I wish I hadn't, but I did." Victoria looked down, shame heating her face. "You don't deserve to feel like this," he continued. "What he did, it's not just cruel. It's criminal. And you have the right to fight back." For the first time since the restaurant, Victoria lifted her gaze. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't when she asked, "What do I need to do?" Daniel's reply was simple, calm, and firm. "Let me represent you. Let's take him to court." Victoria had always been the woman who stayed silent, who smiled through pain, who believed that if she loved hard enough, endured long enough, everything would eventually get better. But after that night, after the slap, the cameras, the world watching her crumble, something inside her shifted. It wasn't sudden, like a bolt of lightning. It was quiet and steady, like a flame slowly catching fire. She moved in with her sister permanently, turning the spare bedroom into a space of healing. The room was modest, a small bed, pale blue curtains, a reading lamp, but it felt like freedom. No more cold marble floors. No more guarded elevators or security codes. No more walking on eggshells around Lucas. For the first time in years, she breathed without fear. After her meeting with Daniel Monroe, things moved quickly. He filed charges against Lucas for assault, citing the video as undeniable evidence. But it wasn't just the slap they went after. It was everything. The financial control. The manipulation. The verbal degradation. Victoria sat through hours of meetings, recounting years of emotional abuse she had once brushed off as just marriage. Each story hurt to retell, but with every word, she shed another layer of silence. News of her lawsuit made headlines again, this time, in her favor. Victoria Blackwood presses charges against husband for abuse, the articles read. Millionaire's wife breaks her silence. The public responded with overwhelming support. Celebrities tweeted their solidarity. Advocacy groups reached out to offer resources. Thousands of messages flooded her social media, survivors sharing their stories, women thanking her for speaking up. A fundraiser launched by a domestic violence nonprofit raised over $300,000 in under a week. And when Daniel read her the messages, Victoria wept, not out of sadness, but because she no longer felt alone. Then came the interview. It aired live on a Sunday night, broadcast nationwide. Victoria sat across from a well-known journalist, her hair pulled back, a simple black dress draped over her growing belly. She looked tired, but resolute. "I didn't come here to shame anyone," she said, voice steady. "I came here to tell the truth. Because for years, I told myself this was normal. That I was lucky. That maybe if I were better, quieter, more agreeable, he'd treat me with love again. But love doesn't hit. Love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't isolate." She paused, placing a hand over her stomach. "I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. I'm fighting for every woman who thinks she has to stay silent. For every unborn child who deserves to grow up in a home without fear." The interview went viral overnight. Hashtags changed. No longer about the abuse, but about her resilience. Hashtag stand with Victoria. Hashtag from victim to warrior. In the quiet afterward, as the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, Victoria sat alone in her dressing room, tears streaking down her face. Not from grief, but from the power of finally reclaiming her voice. Lucas sat in his penthouse office, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but he couldn't enjoy the view. His jaw clenched as he scrolled through headlines on his phone, each one worse than the last. Blackwood Technologies faces internal crisis following domestic abuse allegations. Investors pull out as CEO faces public backlash. His fingers trembled with barely contained rage. Just days ago, he had the world at his feet. Now, everything he'd built was cracking beneath him, and all because of her. He had underestimated Victoria. Gravely. He thought she would hide, cry, beg, stay quiet like she always had. But instead, she had filed charges, gone on national television, and painted him for exactly what he was. And the worst part? People believed her. The courtroom hadn't even opened yet, and the public had already cast their verdict. His phone rang again. Another board member. Lucas didn't answer. He already knew what they were calling for: emergency meetings, damage control, questions about leadership. "Your actions are hurting the company's image," they had told him. "You've become a liability." His empire, once revered and envied, was now considered toxic. Even his most loyal shareholders were growing cold. Sponsorship deals were dropping faster than he could count. Tech conferences disinvited him. A major software partnership was suspended indefinitely. The company's stock value plummeted overnight. Analysts speculated if Blackwood Technologies could survive the storm, or if Lucas himself would be ousted. He tried to hold on to one constant: Harper. But Harper was changing too. At first, she stayed close, stroking his ego, whispering reassurances, playing the doting mistress. She told him Victoria was manipulative, that it was all a scheme. Lucas, desperate to believe anyone was still on his side, clung to her words. But Harper had always been an opportunist, not a loyal partner. And when the money began to tremble, so did her affection. She started dressing for meetings he wasn't invited to. She spent more time on her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't let him see. He overheard her once, laughing softly into the phone. "No, I'm not tied down. Just weighing my options." That was when the panic crept in. Lucas had built his life on dominance, on control. But now, every lever he used to manipulate others was slipping from his grasp. He couldn't buy silence. He couldn't spin the media. He couldn't even trust the woman who claimed to love him. For the first time, Lucas Blackwood felt fear, not the fear of failure, but the fear of powerlessness. The world was turning against him. His name, once a symbol of success, had become a punchline in morning shows. Protesters now stood outside his company building with signs that read, "Monsters wear suits." And in his gut, he knew it was only the beginning. The courtroom was buzzing long before the judge took the bench. Reporters filled every available seat in the gallery, their pens ready, cameras perched just outside the heavy wooden doors. It wasn't just a trial, it was a spectacle. Lucas Blackwood versus the woman he tried to silence. The world was watching. Lucas entered first, dressed in a sleek black suit, his face carefully neutral, chin held high. But there was something hollow in his eyes, an emptiness that hadn't been there months ago. He barely glanced at the rows of onlookers. Beside him sat his high-powered legal team, a row of steely-eyed men in expensive suits, each one prepared to defend his reputation at all costs. Victoria entered moments later, the room falling to a hush as she walked slowly to her seat. Her pregnancy was even more visible now, her posture straighter than ever. She wore no dramatic makeup or designer clothes, just a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back. But it was the fire in her gaze that drew attention. She was no longer the woman trembling outside a restaurant. She was here to fight. Lucas's lead attorney wasted no time. He stood and launched into an opening statement riddled with strategic character assassination. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said smoothly, "has been experiencing severe emotional turbulence due to her pregnancy. Our evidence will show that her claims are rooted in paranoia, delusion, and hormone-induced instability. Mr. Blackwood is not a criminal, he is a husband who tried to help a troubled wife." A few gasps escaped the gallery. Daniel Monroe, seated beside Victoria, didn't flinch. When it was his turn, he stood and spoke with calm precision. "What you will see in this courtroom is not a woman unraveling. You'll see a woman rising, after years of psychological manipulation, control, and public abuse. We don't need theories or assumptions. We have facts. And we have evidence." One by one, Daniel and his team laid out their case. The video of the slap was played on a large screen, audible gasps filling the courtroom once again. They presented financial records showing how Lucas had isolated Victoria financially, cutting off her access to personal funds. They brought forward medical reports from Victoria's physician detailing anxiety symptoms that traced back years, along with a therapist's letter confirming emotional abuse. But the most shocking piece came from social media. Harper's private posts, screenshots gathered and verified, were displayed before the court. In one, she joked about stealing someone's husband and making her cry. In another, she posted a selfie with Lucas at a hotel, days before the slap, captioned, "When he's all mine, finally." The courtroom turned icy. Lucas's face grew redder with each passing slide. He tried to speak, to perform concern, but the judge raised a hand. "Mr. Blackwood," she said sternly, "I suggest you listen more and speak less." His attempts at apologizing fell flat. Everyone in the room could sense the falseness, the rehearsed remorse, the forced regret. The judge, a composed woman known for her intolerance of manipulative tactics, watched him with cool disinterest. And in that moment, it became clear, no amount of money or power could rewrite the truth. Just when it seemed the courtroom had seen every angle of Lucas Blackwood's carefully hidden cruelty, the unexpected happened. Two surprise witnesses stepped forward, and with them, the final pieces of his crumbling empire fell into full view. The first was Miles Carter, a former senior financial analyst at Blackwood Technologies. Tall, soft-spoken, and visibly nervous, he stepped up to the stand with a stack of documents in his hands. He had worked under Lucas for nearly 6 years before resigning quietly, citing ethical conflicts. No one had ever questioned it, until now. Under oath, Miles cleared his throat and began. "I was present during multiple private meetings at the Blackwoods estate. Lucas, Mr. Blackwood, was often verbally aggressive toward his wife." He paused, eyes darting to Victoria. "There were 2 occasions I witnessed him physically block her from leaving a room. Once, he raised his hand like he was going to hit her, but stopped when he noticed I was standing nearby. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Daniel leaned in. "Did you report it?" "I wanted to," Miles admitted, "but the company had a strict NDA policy. Speaking out meant risking my career." He turned back to the judge. "But after the video, and seeing her speak out publicly, I couldn't stay quiet anymore." Lucas sat frozen, lips pressed tightly together, eyes fixed on the table in front of him. Then came the second witness. Her name was Elena Moore, poised, composed, and wearing a simple blazer with no attempt at glamour. She introduced herself as a former girlfriend of Lucas Blackwood from several years earlier. "I was with him during the early days of his company," she said. "At first, he was charming, thoughtful. But once I moved in, things changed." Elena detailed how Lucas had slowly manipulated her into cutting off her friends, how he once threatened to ruin her reputation if she ever left him. "He thrives on control," she said calmly. "Everything Victoria described, I lived it too. I just didn't have the courage to fight." Her testimony was the final nail. The courtroom sat in stunned silence, the weight of the truth settling in like stone. Lucas didn't speak. His expression didn't change. But something in him visibly broke. His empire wasn't just crumbling anymore. It was burning to the ground. The courtroom was silent as the judge returned to her bench, her expression unreadable, a thick file of evidence and testimonies resting before her. The weight of the past few weeks, every document, every video, every word, hung heavy in the air. Lucas sat rigid in his seat, a cold sheen of sweat lining his brow. Victoria, calm but tense, gently rested her hand on her belly as Daniel leaned toward her, offering a small, reassuring nod. Then, the gavel came down. "In the matter of Victoria Blackwood versus Lucas Blackwood," the judge began, her voice clear and steady, "this court finds the defendant guilty of physical assault, emotional abuse, and coercive control." Murmurs erupted in the gallery, but the judge raised a hand, silencing the room. Furthermore, in consideration of the defendant's pattern of behavior and lack of remorse, full physical and legal custody of the unborn child is granted to Victoria Blackwood. Lucas's jaw tightened. He didn't look at anyone. Not the judge. Not Victoria. Not even his legal team, who were now quietly gathering their papers with faces that no longer held hope. "In addition," the judge continued, "the defendant is ordered to complete a 12-month anger management program and 800 hours of community service. He is fined $750,000 to be paid to the plaintiff, along with a separate divorce settlement of $15 million, effective immediately." Victoria closed her eyes briefly, tears welling, but this time, they were tears of relief. "And lastly," the judge concluded, "this court strongly advises the Blackwood Technologies Board of Directors to review the defendant's standing. This courtroom may not have the authority to remove him, but the public certainly will." Within hours of the verdict, news outlets exploded with coverage. "Blackwood guilty. Victoria wins justice." Paparazzi flooded the courthouse steps, but Victoria was shielded by Daniel and her sister as they quietly exited through a side door. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her silence now held more power than Lucas's entire defense. By nightfall, the board of Blackwood Technologies released a statement. Lucas Blackwood was officially removed from all positions, effective immediately. And Harper? She had vanished. No public comment. No statements. Her social media accounts were wiped clean. Rumors swirled about her fleeing the country, already seen on a yacht in Monaco with a new billionaire. But Victoria didn't care. Justice had been served. And for the first time in years, she felt free. 6 months later, the delivery room echoed with the softest sound Victoria had ever heard, the first cry of her newborn daughter. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the nurse gently placed the tiny bundle in her arms. "She's perfect," the doctor whispered. And she was. Warm, pink, and strong. Victoria looked down at her daughter, her fingers trembling as they traced the baby's soft cheek. "Grace," she whispered. "Your name is Grace." It was more than just a name. It was everything she had fought for, hope after pain, light after darkness, a promise to never let history repeat itself. Holding Grace against her chest, Victoria felt a calm she hadn't known in years. A sense of wholeness. In the following weeks, the world watched as she transformed not just her own life but the lives of countless others. With the money from her divorce settlement and public donations, she launched the Grace Foundation, named after her daughter. Its mission was clear: to support and protect victims of domestic violence, offer shelter, legal aid, and therapy, and, most importantly, give them their voices back. Victoria spoke at universities, conferences, and women's shelters. Her voice, once silenced, now filled auditoriums. She wasn't just a symbol of survival. She had become a beacon for others still trapped in shadows. Her pain had not been in vain. Then came the documentary. Netflix approached her with a proposal, one she initially hesitated to accept. But after meeting with the female director and hearing her vision, Victoria agreed. The result was Behind the Silence, the Victoria Blackwood story. It premiered to global acclaim. The raw footage, the interviews, the court clips, it all painted a devastating but empowering portrait of a woman who refused to stay broken. Viewers across continents were moved. Letters and emails flooded in. Survivors said they found the courage to leave because of her. Women who had never spoken out shared their stories for the first time. Victoria's story became a movement. And far away, in a dimly lit penthouse stripped of the luxuries he once flaunted, Lucas watched it all unfold on a muted screen. Disgraced. Forgotten. Alone. He had built empires, but destroyed his legacy with a single act of violence. Victoria, however, had built something far greater. From ashes and heartbreak, she rose. And the world, this time, stood by the woman. For Grace. For herself. For all the ones still waiting to rise.